positivity, encouragement, and I know where to get it. Let's rise. How do? Yeah, I got to get that out. Think about the tough times you've been through in the past. And at that moment, you didn't think you was going to make it, and you made it.
Yeah.
All right, now, you know what?
Hey, hey,
We don't need my answer. Okay, let's
No,
move
no, I
on.
want your answer. Go on, say your answer, please.
See, you know what?
I'm trying to cut you out. I ain't trying
Pam?
to cut you out.
Oh, Lord.
So you know what we did to him? We went to doggy daycare. Yes.
she
We
said it.
yes, we took him to doggy daycare. So maybe they can teach him some manners that maybe we can't teach him. And just remember that you know what? You are directing your life within yourself. So whatever you want your life to be, whatever you do today is going to decide your future for tomorrow. So make sure you direct it carefully, all right? Come on, rise. Let's go higher, higher, higher. When you enjoy something that you really enjoy, that you enjoy what you really enjoy, but you enjoy what you really do.
What did you just say? That messed me up.
Messed me up too.
I was waiting for the hair to go all over the place when you said that, but I think you got through it.
But
No, she did it anyway.
how did had to curve it a little bit. Woo! Man, I am so glad to be here today. We're gonna have a great time on the show. How you guys doing out yonder? How y'all doing? Oh, so you're kind of quiet. But you know, it's all right. You don't it's okay to be shy. I'm shy too sometimes. But you know what? We're gonna have a great show
Lisette, you there? What
today.
happened? Oh, she's
Huh?
talking.
Huh? Yes, we're gonna have a great show today. You know what? It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful day. You know what? We're gonna have a great show today. We got a great guest. We have Christian Frazier. So make sure you go ahead on and tell a neighbor and a friend to tune in today. You still got time? Just starting the show. How are you guys doing today? I don't know about you. Keone, are you up there?
He was for a second. I think we lost him for a second.
Okay. Well, look. I know that I've been having a great day. You know what? I had a great weekend as well. But we just got to keep the people in Texas and Mexico and some of these other areas that's going through disasters. We need to keep them in our prayers. Okay, it's just so sad to see people losing everything that they own in their lives. For it's such a terrible disaster. So we need to keep those people in prayer. But you know what? I just want you to know that we're going to talk about happiness today. We have a great guest today, and he has a book called Happiness Triggers. And I want to know more about that. If you want to know more about that, you need to tune in today. Okay. He's going to show us his book in just a little while, and we're going to talk about his book and talk about some other things. People are going through some tough times right now, and they need to know how to deal with it. Sometimes we just don't know how.
Lisette, what's so funny? I love you so much. First of all, the ending of that, your new intro always makes me laugh because I remember that day I was sick, and when you said what you said and said what you said and then said it again what you said, and it totally messed me up that day. That was funny. But I remember our production meeting this morning. I was like, let's not use the phrase "people are going through tough times" because we say it every week. And then as soon as you said it, I said,
Hey, you got to flow with the curves.
you got
Got to
the
flow. Hey, I'm about my flowing today.
Look,
I'm
now. Wait a
flowing.
minute. Where
go
did that
whatever comes naturally. Go whatever comes naturally. If it flows out, that's it.
where did
Hey,
that
I got
come
to
from?
do that.
Where did
You know
that come
what? This is going to be a great show because I'm excited. I'm excited. I met this wonderful person, Christian. we did we was on a magazine cover. Well, he was on the magazine cover, but I was in the magazine, and I told a story about how I you know had my new album out and everything. But he was on the cover of Fine Success magazine with Vicki Hankins, now Jones. But I'm just telling you, it was amazing to hear his story and just to see him, thriving as an artist, as a speaker, and as a wonderful person. And I remember even when my husband was going through diabetes, he got the final diagnosis that he had to take insulin, and he didn't want to do that. Who does? And he motivated him, and didn't know he was motivating him because of I was texting him. He had did something on his social media site, and he was saying something about how he was, how he was dealing with diabetes and taking insulin. And I began to do a little DM with him, on his media site, and he encouraged me, and I gave that message to my husband, and he encouraged him. So this is a great speaker today. I don't want to take a whole lot of the time.
I saw I saw Clarence eating peach cobbler and vanilla ice cream yesterday.
You ain't gonna tell that. You ain't
So
gonna
You know
tell.
what though? That's all right. That's all right
You
though.
gotta
We can,
tell.
as diabetics, we can eat peach cobbler and ice cream as long as we don't eat it every day.
I'm gonna
That's
Mhm.
where the problem comes in because I love me some peach
hold on,
cobbler.
hold on. I'm gonna bring our guest home
But
because
look,
he
we and
Lisette,
it's like we ready
Lisette,
for the guests. We fixing to bring him on, all
yeah,
right?
Lisette, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring him on because he forgot they can't hear him when he's
I know.
backstage. He's
Oh,
been
I
saying
know. I'm just adding in.
so. Let's bring
I
on
thought
our
I heard a sound.
let's bring on our guest. Dr. Christian Frazier is gonna join us.
I thought I heard the sound already. I was just like, okay, maybe it's some. I just hear people clapping, when I walk by. That's what it is.
No, no, no. This is such an honor. Thank you so much, Christian,
No,
for coming on Rise with Listen.
you heard that peach cobbler and ice cream, and you got excited. That's what.
So this is Christian Frazier, and Christian Frazier is an awesome person. Why don't you tell a little bit about him, Keone, our producer?
Yeah, he's a great guy. All right, next question. No, I'm just kidding. Uh, Dr. Christian Frazier, he's an actor, just like I, which is great. He's been had appearances on shows like Law and Order, Gotham, Blue Bloods, Saturday Night Live. He's collaborated with such actors as Jim Carrey, Dave Chappelle, Regina King, and Meryl Streep. One of my favorite actors is on that list. You'll never guess who it is. He's done voiceovers for the U.S. Navy recruiting campaign for not for the Army, so I'll yell at him about that. And he's been featured all over magazines and newspapers all over the world, anything from the New York Post to the Orlando Sentinel. I could sit here for the next 5 hours and run down his list of accomplishments, but the number one accomplishment that he has on here that's not going to be in his bio is the ability to motivate people. That's going to be the best ability that he has. We can go with Meryl Streep, we can hang out with Regina King, we can be in a newspaper, but there's a lot of people doing those things and they're not helping anybody else. And so that's why I say that's the best thing that he brings to the table is motivating and help people. I could hear him. Yes, Clarence, that's how ears work. All right. So how you doing? How you doing, Doctor?
I'm doing all right. Thank you again for that intro. You mentioned the most important gift is inspiring and motivating people, and I feel like that's what I really was born to do. Like I wake up every day with an intention of motivating people, of inspiring people. Because as Lisette said earlier, we are going through some tough times, and we need a lot of we lack hope today. We lack inspiration, and even those who are inspired and have a lot of motivation, sometimes some things come along in your life that knocks the wind out of you, and you
Yeah.
need somebody else to come along and motivate you and help you stay inspired. Or what I like to say, somebody that reminds you of who you really already are. Like somebody who just say, you already you. Somebody had to remind you, you's a bad somebody. Like somebody you need a best friend, you need a family member, somebody that reminds you, you got this.
This is good. This is absolutely good. I absolutely agree because I can think of tough times when I needed that. I needed someone to say to me that you're going to make it, and I was really going through some tough times, I remember when I was going through divorce, I was going through domestic violence. I was just feeling down, in the gutter somewhere in dark places, and I needed someone to encourage me. So I really, really appreciate this. Even with all the things that are going on in this world, um, it's just very, very taxing, and
Well,
sometimes you get up in the morning and you feel that like ugh in your stomach because it's a lot going on.
Well, Christian, I want to ask you this because Lisette says that she always says there's a lot going on, and what I try to, because I kind of have this same job as you. I work with people 7 to 77 years old, and I'm constantly trying to motivate them. And I tell people, hey, listen, as long as you're going to be alive on this earth, life is going to life, and there's always going to be something going on. So we're always going to be in tough times, but we're always going to be in great times. And I think the problem with people is, and one of the reasons why you wrote your book is, we dwell on the things that are going wrong and we ignore everything that's happening right. I'll take
Exactly.
relationships, for example. I remember I had a friend that would always call me when things are going wrong in their relationship. And one time I just stopped her and I said, you know what? You never call me about the happy stuff. She's like, what do you mean? I said, go out and have fun. I never hear about that. When
Interesting.
you do something great or he does something great, I never hear about that. I only hear about the problems. Why don't I hear about the good stuff? And she literally paused for a second. I said, we don't dwell on that and we look at the negative so much. Why is that?
Well, it's some people have what I call a trauma coded lens. Like their glasses, instead of having the regular shades, it's a trauma coded shade, and everything that they see is negative. So it's like you and somebody else could be looking down the street at the same thing. You see it as, oh wow, that is amazing, and the other person sees it as totally negative.
Wow.
So when you have people that have been through a lot of trauma, that have been through a lot of pain, have been through a lot of things, they experience things totally different. So we have to actually unlearn a lot of the stuff that, first of all, that we've learned from our parents, our grandparents, and then we have to learn how to reframe. We can't change our past, but we can reframe our past. In other words, bad times are supposed to happen, they're going to happen, but instead of saying, okay, what did it do to me? You can actually reframe it and say, what did it teach me?
That's
Like
good.
financial troubles taught you how to stretch a meal, 2 or 3 days. It taught you those things. It taught you how to be, more frugal. It taught you how to save money. It taught you these things. And then also life situations. They taught you the type of people, the type of man, the type of woman, the type of places that you don't like to go to, the type of people that you don't like to be around. So all of our problems really taught us something, and they taught us, and a lot of times they gave us gifts. You think about this. Think
Yes.
about this. Every superhero that you've seen has gone through major trauma.
That's true.
Superman lost he lost his parents on Krypton. He lost his earthly father. Batman lost his parents. Woman was stripped from her island. The Flash lost it. All of them had to go through pain, but pain is what made them the greatest version of who they are today.
Mhm.
Without that pain, they wouldn't be the heroes that they are. So we have to take it and reframe it and say, look, this pain, it taught me something. It made me better. I didn't like it and it didn't feel good when I was going through it, but I'm better because of it.
This is so good, because that is so true that the things and the hurts that I've gone through in my life, it has made me a better person. and it has made me stronger. Kind of like the bionic woman. She's going to be stronger. I mean, as they was
Stronger,
building her, all
better,
better.
faster.
There we go. That's we're better.
I have the bionic like so when you send me a text, it goes like that's what I have right now.
And this
That
is
is
good because
hilarious.
I wonder, Frazier, what was your bad or your
Wait
trauma
a minute,
that made
Lisette.
you
Wait, hold on, Lisette. You can't just gloss over. This man has the Bionic Man theme text to his
so
phone.
excited?
What? Why
But
do you have the
so
Bionic Man
I'm
theme?
old school because it's loud. Actually, as I was going through the text message notifications, I was like, these are not loud enough. But the bionic one, I can hear it from the other room. So I'm old. I'm older. I'm almost 55 years old. So like, I need something that I can hear. So that bionic sounds like and I'm in the mall or in the grocery store. People turn around, and sometimes people they kind of remember it, but they don't. And then there's those that are like, oh man, that's cool because it's classic.
You'll see the smile. Look at that. So, Lisette, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's
That
okay.
is crazy because sometimes somebody does the smallest things. Somebody can be in the mall 2 feet in front of you having the worst day of their life, and they hear that sound and it brings a momentary smile to their face.
This is
But you
awesome.
looks like you were asking me about what traumas I've been through. So like, I felt like I have been through a lot of trauma in my life. I suffer with anxiety and depression. I'm a high IQ person, so I went to the Navy Nuclear Power School. This is like the second hardest school in the world next to MIT. They take 6 years of college and cram it into a year and a half. So what most people are doing like 16 weeks for a semester, we're doing it 1 week. First week we're doing algebra, and then the next week we're doing thermodynamics.
Oh, wow.
So like, but what I've learned is that people with high IQs are prone to have anxiety. So, I lived a life of untreated or undiagnosed and depression and anxiety to the point where attempted suicide. I had financial disasters. I've lost my houses. I've been homeless. I've been through physical things and a lot of things that one of my friends, she says that, like, you going through something right now, but you still show up online, happy, inspiring people. And I had to preach a couple of weeks ago, and the topic was, preaching through your pain. And it's something that we have to inspire people, we have to motivate people, even through our own pain. But we have to also realize that it's not our job. See, a lot of us with the gift of inspiring and motivating people, we feel like a responsibility, like it's our job to do that. We have to realize that it is not our job, even though we end up doing it while we're going through it, sometimes. But you have to realize that all the time, it's not your responsibility.
Wow.
Sometimes you have to take a step back and make sure that you take care of yourself
And stop right
because
there. This is good.
because hold up. Let me finish this
This is
thought
good.
because it's just like when I teach in my mental health first aid
Mm, mm,
class.
mm,
It's
mm.
like we have to learn how to put the oxygen mask on ourselves before and they tell you that every time you get on the airplane, make sure you put the oxygen mask on yourself because before you take care of anybody else. So make sure that we do that.
This is good. This is good because I'm also a motivational speaker. And I love encouraging people because I know how it feels to be down. So every day I have my messages on my social media sites, and I thank God for this opportunity here on Rise with Lisette encourage people on Kiana Productions. I enjoy it. I love it. However, I get down. I get depressed, and I'm saying, like, how do I get out of that? Well, for one thing, I just I don't like the feeling of being depressed and down. I hate that feeling. And I'm a comedian as well, so I'll find something to laugh about in the midst of all of it because I love to laugh and I love to be light. So I'm always, just like my son had to go to the he had to go to the hospital. One of my sons, Zaki, and in the ER, I'm sitting there cracking jokes, and we don't went from him hurting, and we up there laughing, because even if I go to the emergency room, I'm gonna laugh. I'm gonna find something to laugh about, cracking jokes there in the emergency room. That's
Me
how I
too.
cope with my issues.
I crack jokes. I've cracked jokes at funerals. Like that's, I mean, that's what I do. That's who I am. I am a stand-up comedian. I perform at almost every room in New York City where all the greats have performed, from Chris Rock to like everyone. Like I've actually worked with a lot of the comedians. Like I worked on Top Five, got a chance to meet Chris Rock and all these different comedians. So
Is
it was
he really as
amazing.
funny as he seems to be?
Yeah.
Oh, he's totally cool. You know, like my scene, like he was actually going in because he had in top five. He hadn't been doing comedy for a while, so he was going back up on stage to perform. And I greeted him with one of the top comedy managers in New York City. Me and him were sitting there just chopping it up, and then all of a sudden we're welcoming Chris Rock into the comedy club, and it was the Greenwich Village Comedy Club, which I performed at a few times. So comedy feels real natural to me. I love it. I do it. It's actually therapeutic, and I feel like comedy helps a lot with our mental health. I call it like reality comedy. It's like what I do because I like to talk about things that affect us like for real. You know, things like getting older. Like like with dudes, like having having relations, in the middle of having a low blood sugar, diabetes, like passing out, you know.
You know what? You talked about uh, when she talked about being depressed, and we talked about those things. And I always tell people I do this little game in one of the classes where I say I want everybody to name an emotion and tell me if it's good or bad. So people will say anger bad, depression bad, happiness good. They'll do the status quo, right? I said you're all wrong. All emotions are good. You have them for a reason. That's why they're there. So don't feel
I
your
love to talk about that. I love to talk
right.
about that, especially the anger part,
Hmm.
because people try to feel like anger is some that negative emotion. But see, like I'm a biblically trained. I went to seminary. I have a master's in divinity, doctorate in divinity, and we talk about like in First Samuel, I think it was around chapter 11, and it said that the spirit of the Lord came upon him, and when the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, he got angry. See, a lot of times they think when the Spirit of the Lord comes upon you, you're supposed to get happy. But here it said the Spirit of the Lord came upon him and he got angry. We're supposed to get angry at some things. We're supposed to be angry when we see people being treated badly, when we see our, children on the street, the prostitution, on their body, and being hooked on drugs, crime, and all these things, and also being mistreated as a people. We're supposed to get angry, and that's a good emotion. The problem is that if you let anger
Hmm.
control you, that's where we messed up.
Right, right.
That's
It's
it.
always what do you do with that emotion? If you got angry and you decided to go out and hang out with people and laugh and play video games or whatever you want to do, that's great. If I get angry and I start hitting people with a baseball bat, I didn't handle the anger well. So the emotions are necessary. So let's go to the happiness trigger, because me and you we talked about before the broadcast came on. Everybody talks about their triggers, but again, it's always the negative triggers. So as a person who's clinically depressed, which is different from depression, I don't just get sad because something happens. I can get sad out of nowhere. You got to find those things that trigger you to be happy. And so
Exactly.
to the what you dive into and explain to everybody what happiness triggers are.
So basically, just like you mentioned, like happiness triggers are, we talk about the PTSD triggers, but we don't talk about the happiness triggers. The
Mhm.
happiness triggers are things that you can do to pull you out of those deep, dark moods when you're in a deep depression, because, you can start going down a spiral and then all of a sudden depression happens and you're depressed for a day, then it becomes a week, then it becomes 2, 3 weeks, a month, then we get into a major depressive mood. And then if you're not careful, it actually becomes your personality, over a period of time. And then you have claimed it as your name, as how you describe. And then what happens is that so many of us are attached to being depressed, being anxious, or being that person. We've labeled ourselves as that. And then when we put that label on top of ourselves, it's hard for us to transcend it. We, like, I teach in mental health first aid, like, that's a person living with bipolar depression. That's not a bipolar person. So we don't want to give them that description, and we don't want to give ourselves that description. So, happiness triggers can be as simple as, even if you can't sing a song, because it releases endorphins and natural antidepressants in your body. Going to the gym, running, it releases natural antidepressants in your body. So it's like developing a list of things that you can do when you feel depressed, but it's really just more than that. The book is actually, it's been endorsed by a lot of counselors and doctors, people who work in public health, because there's like reflective exercises, there's journal prompts, there's things in this book. So this is more than a book, it's a workbook, and it's teaching you how to change your mindset, how to reframe your thoughts about what happens to you, so that way, when the next problem happens, the next, you know, uh, hurricane happens, the next situation happens, it doesn't affect you as much as it did before. As you start to grow in your emotional intelligence and you start to develop resilience, then all of a sudden, that situation that happened in the past, when it happens again, or a similar situation, a lot of times, like, I know when I was younger, I used to get extremely angry, extremely upset, and a financial disaster would cause me to go into, a deep depressive mode. But now it's like, okay, been there, done that before. All right, now trouble don't last always. I know that it's not going to be the end. And a lot of times when we go through situations, especially for the first time, it feels like there's no hope. It feels like there's no way out. So the book is basically training you to kind of rewire your brain, kind of unlearn a lot of the things, because we were taught, like, in order to be loved, we had to do things, we had to make people happy, we had to do that, and it was just wrong thinking. So again, the book is just teaching us to unlearn a lot of different things. Like, there's a chapter in the book that talks about a digital detox, because if you watch the news every day, for a few hours a day, it's actually going to drop up your anxiety. They use keywords, they use sounds, and they use everything in the titles, the fate, to drive up your emotions, to drive up your anxiety.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden, you're wondering, like, why am I mad? Why am I angry? And you don't know why. It's because you develop like an underlying tone of stress that's just there all the time by the things that you do every day. So for me, I tell people, you can stay informed, but don't stay consumed. Know what's going on, in the world, but do you have to watch the news for an hour, 2 hours every day? No, you don't. You can detach from that. So that's just one of the things
Mhm.
in the book that I teach and I talk about. And the biggest thing that I feel like is the basis of the book is mindfulness meditation. I'm a certified mindfulness meditation instructor. And mindfulness meditation, a psychiatry journal, the National
Mhm.
Psychiatry Journal, JAMA Journal, stated that mindfulness meditation can be as effective as medication in the treatment of anxiety. And I know that I was on medication. And when I started doing mindfulness meditation about 6 years ago, it's actually helped me to sleep better. It's helped me to be more productive. It's helped me to be more focused. It's helped me to deal with a lot of situations. So,
Explain that a little
instead
bit
of
more about the
so,
meditation.
so basically, because a lot of people like there's so many myths about meditation. Oh, I got to get down this yoga pose. I got to do this. I got to do that. And they're all basically they are just myths. Mindfulness is basically being present. You know, depression is typically worried about what people did to you in the past. Anxiety is worried about what's going to happen in the future.
Mhm.
Mindfulness meditation teaches you to stay in the present. They say the present is the most powerful moment that you have
Wow.
because it determines your future. Each decision that we make, each thought process that we have helps determine our future. So what it's doing is teaching you to be more present, and focus on the now and not what happened in the past and not worrying about a future that doesn't even exist yet.
That's
And how
powerful.
we and how I explain it sometimes is like our mind is like an ocean with a storm on the top. And there's a lot of wind and lightning and thunder blowing and everything like that. But there's a part of the ocean that is always peaceful, and that's deep down below. So, what mindfulness meditation is teaching you how to get away from the surface of your mind where all the chaos and everything, worrying about bills, worrying about this person, worrying about sickness, and worrying about what's going to happen in the world and the news and everything, and it takes you to that deep place in your mind where it's peaceful and it's quiet, and that's where you can actually think. That's where the creativity comes in. That's where people think about. They come up with songs. People come up with books. People come up with movie ideas. That's when you actually hear from God, because God does not speak loudly. He speaks in a small, still voice.
Yes, that's so true. He speaks in the quiet place. I know when I say quiet place, my producer, that's you don't want that's not the
That's
place.
a movie.
Yeah, but really, there's another quiet place.
Nah, y'all, I'm just marveling because he be yelling at me all the time. So I don't know, I must be doing something wrong because he always yelling at me. What's
Hey,
wrong with
And
you?
you know what? Sometimes that is our own brain,
Yeah.
and you hear it, and it sounds like God, and it's us. And so, hold on, I want to teach you this trick because I love to talk about this one. See, a lot of times we have this. When we go through a situation, we go through trauma. A lot of times we blame ourselves, and then we have this negative self-talk, this inner voice, this inner critic that's telling us, "You did this, or you did that. You should have did this, or you should have did that, and you're not going to get out of this, or whatever." And we have this. So they say, give your inner voice a name, like Bob or whatever. I say, give your inner voice a name of somebody that you don't like, like Keisha, whatever it may be. If there's any Keisha listening, no disrespect to you, but give your voice a name of somebody that you don't like. And every time your voice says something negative, you be like, "Shut up, Bob. Shut up, Keisha." You're talking to your voice. You're telling it to shut up. And then when it says something negative, like you're never gonna, amount to anything, or it says like you're never gonna be enough. And when you say "shut up," and then you counter it with a positive affirmations. Not only am I enough, I'm more than enough. And so what happens over time, that negative voice starts to quiet down, and you don't hear that negative voice anymore.
that's
Yeah,
good.
but the problem is when I do that, she still ends up calling me on the phone. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. And I can't tell my mom to shut up. So, no, I say that as a joke, but a lot of times my negative voice in my head, it's actually the voice of my mom when you talked about the traumas and learning from our past. My mom, not to paint her out as a villain, but at the end of the day, I love her, but everything out of the mouth was negative. And
It was being
when
internalized. And what happens is that those external voices become our internal voices over time. And
Mhm.
you start hearing it in your own, you start hearing it in your own voice.
Yeah. But one of the things I learned to do that's separate from what you were saying that I think a lot of people don't do is when I do have situations, I will stop and say, what role did I play in this situation? Which keeps me out of the just blaming everyone in the world for the issue that I have. I'm like, okay, what role did I play in this? Because I can't fix it if you won't admit to yourself what role you played in the issue.
I love it because I wish everybody did that. Instead of blaming everybody else, we really and the truth of the matter is, if you think about a lot of your calamity, a lot of your traumas, a lot of the stuff, a lot of it was allowed by us. We allowed that person to disrespect us. We allowed that person to do it for too long. You know, we allow this person to do this. We allow this person to do that. And then when you really take a step back and you look at it, you did have a part to play in that situation. And the part to play, maybe it was people pleasing. Maybe I just didn't say nothing. Maybe I didn't set my boundaries. Maybe I didn't, let somebody know that what they said didn't feel good. It actually, kind of ruffled my feathers a little bit because because we're trained. I'm like, nah, let's let it slide. Let's let it do this. No, the times of letting stuff slide these days, that's over with. You have to really let people know if they're hurting you or they're saying something to you. At the Thanksgiving dinners, at the Christmas dinners, when you gonna get married? Like it's whatever. Like, but when they keep nagging and keep saying those things, but we have to also learn to not give them the same energy that they give us. And sometimes it's good to call it out. Like when if you have a spouse, partner, friend, or something like that that does something passive aggressive, then you call it out. Like that was real passive aggressive of you. And I'm just gonna tell you, like I'm not gonna be accepting that type of behavior. Either you're gonna have to change your speech, or I'm gonna have to set boundaries, and you're just not gonna have access to me anymore. Simple as that.
You know what? This reminds me of something that happened. I had one of my relatives, an older relative, that said something really ugly to me at one of the gatherings of the family. I think it was like a reunion, family reunion or something. And I tried my best. I tried my best to hold it. I said, I now I've been holding this stuff for years, this little negative stuff that you've been throwing on me. And believe it or not, the woman is way up in age. I think she might be in her 90s or something. And
Those are the ones that always got the sassy mouth.
there we go. Every year she wants to poke and poke, poke and pick and poke. And I couldn't take it. I said, "Excuse me." I just went off on her, and everybody in the family was like, "Oh my God,
Did you
you
feel
gonna go
good?
off on an old woman?"
Did
And
you
I said,
feel
"You know
good
what?
afterwards?
Huh?
Didn't you feel good afterwards?
Yes." I had to go outside and breathe and get it off of me. And then I thought about, I said, "Wait a minute. Nah, that's not me." I went back in there. Yes, I did. Went back in
Yeah,
there
I
and I
get you.
apologized to her, and I said, I apologize. The way that I said it was not right, but what I said, I meant. I said, but the way I delivered it was very wrong. I think the next day I got her like 12 dozen roses and took over her house. And I said, I love you. I said, I just don't like this negative stuff about you. And she cried. We both wept. And I love her. But I just couldn't take it anymore. And you're right. Sometimes you just gotta get it out.
Yeah,
You
you
know, I
better.
I love that story because you first of all you recognize that the way that you delivered it was not properly, and that's why I was saying you can't fight fire with fire like that. Because you're basically getting yourself stressed out.
Mhm,
You get your blood pressure up.
mhm.
So like learning how to handle the same situation, just by talking exactly how you are right now, and then they're gonna be surprised because a lot of people do things they expect a response. They're looking for that response. And then when you don't do it and you don't give them that energy, it's like they've lost that power that they had over you. Because if somebody else can get you emotionally charged, they have power over you, and you don't want anyone to have that type of power.
Absolutely. I like that you came back and said that, but I did like that you firstly did it the way you did it, because sometimes that's not what people need to hear. But you came back and corrected it, because maybe if you sometimes it's like when you have kids and you know which one you have to grab by the neck, which one you have to yell at, which one you have to talk to. You don't just treat them all the same. And some people, when you come at them with the most peaceful resolution, it doesn't sink in their head. I had the
Oh
same issue
no,
you
you're
had.
right.
Right. I had the same issue you had with a lady that used to talk so down to us when we were kids. And out of the friend group, I was the first one to turn 18. And we were sitting around talking, and she came and she said something slick out of her mouth. And I just undressed her up and down. And she ran to my mom. Did you hear how your child talked to me? I mean, she said, well, he's 18 now. You should have kept your mouth shut.
No,
You
and
know what?
what you just said is the truth. Like some people, when you come at them calm, peaceful, and quiet,
Mhm.
because I've experienced it, they ignore you. Act like you didn't say nothing at all. And some people only respond when you raise your voice.
But this is where I take
So,
it back to what you said. When I just like Lisette did, when I said that to her, I never ended up going back to talk to her again. She left me alone for the rest of my life. I felt better. I did feel, but because it's not you, I did feel a little bad because you were raised not to talk to adults like that. But I felt better than I did bad, and I got over it. But this is different. This is a family member you're gonna see a lot. She's much older, so I do respect that. But in that moment, even though that wasn't you, I felt like it was justified because sometimes people need to understand how they made you feel in that moment.
and we don't do that enough.
Hmm.
We don't do that enough. Like, give me an example. Even the smallest things. I tell, like, when I teach my class, I tell my students, like, if somebody asks you like how you doing, and if you're not having a good day, tell them like like no, it's a pretty bad day. Like it's stressful. I'm going through some stuff. Instead of faking it and I'm like, oh, I'm good. Like, and we're so used to faking it. And then I noticed that when I tell the truth, people are like, because they're so used to like people telling them everything is okay. But we have to stop faking it. We wear so many masks, and we have, we're a different version of ourselves to so
Well,
many different people, and we need to sometimes, and then a lot of different environments is definitely necessary. Like you don't bring your personal profile to work, and vice versa. I don't want you to bring that professional profile, to the household. So it's necessary, but we do it too often within our social circles, within our friends, and a lot of times we need just to be our authentic selves, because wearing masks is heavy. It puts extra anxiety on you when you're trying to be somebody else. And I know, like, give an example. You said you're a comedian, everybody's a comedian, but it's
hmm
exhausting when everybody invites you to their parties and the gatherings and everything like that, and they want you to perform and make everybody
telling
happy
jokes
and
like
everything
you're
like that, tell
Tupac.
jokes and make, yeah, yeah, but I'm not getting paid,
Right,
so like,
right.
unless I'm getting paid, like, don't invite me to party to have fun, because if I do,
Hmm.
to make the party live, because if you do, I'm gonna sit over in the corner and just sit back and watch everybody, because I didn't get hired to come to
Right.
perform. And we do that not just with comedy, we do it in so many different areas of our
Tell
Yes.
me
lives.
if I'm wrong for this, because when me and Lisette, we get into this all the time. It's every generation's job to say the next generation is terrible, right? She doesn't say it's terrible. I'm being facetious. But the thing I like about people now is that they will talk about their feelings, even though if you talk about your feelings as a man, you're being called a beta and all these other silly things, right? And,
Hmm.
I got into an argument I'm 47. I got into an argument with somebody about 10 years older than me. And he said, everybody's got a mental health issue these days that they need to talk about. What's happening to the world? I said, nothing. It's the same thing that's always been around. I said, I'm sorry that today, if I'm having an issue, I go talk to somebody instead of stopping at the bar on the way home from work, drinking into oblivion, and then go home and smack my wife because she made casserole again. Like we don't want to do that anymore. I'm
We don't
sorry.
want to handle that. So it's generational. So like I'm a mental health advocate. I talk about mental health. I talk about it, with public health. This is a mental health book. I mean, one of the counselors in the book. And, Christian, I started realizing when I read this book that these are like sheets I used to hang out to my clients in therapy. So like if you're not in therapy, this book can actually help you. If you're in therapy, it can help you. But if you're thinking about it, it can actually help get you prepared for therapy so that when you actually go, you can be a little bit more authentic, when you're going to therapy. But yes, mental health is something, especially in the black community, has been taboo. We have a lot of stigma about it. We don't want to talk about it. I have a hard time talking to churches, black churches today, because we have an incentive to train churches and grants to train them for free, but we don't want to talk about it because it's taboo. We want to do the same thing. So what you're right. What I love about this new generation is that they're more willing to talk about mental health. They're more willing to talk about their feelings as opposed to my generation, 50s or whatever. Talk about your feelings. It's like a toxic masculinity that has been defined, and that toxic masculinity is the reason why we have almost a 500,000 men that have committed suicide in 2025 already, and almost a 500,000 men have died by suicide already in 2025. Think about it's probably 2 to 3 times that much that have attempted suicide because of that toxic masculinity and that definition. I can't cry. We work till we die. And a lot of us we use the ER as our healthcare plan. We don't go to the hospital until it's dire straits.
I have a question.
So wait, hold on. Hold on. I'm gonna let you answer your question because I'm gonna shut up after this. It's funny that the only reason why I'm saying that is because of what he just said about the raising of suicide in men, and people say that's because men aren't manly anymore. But it's exactly what I just talked about. The suicide rate in men has increased, but domestic violence between husbands and wives has fell from 63% from 1994 to now. 63% it's fallen. You know why? Because they're not taking it out on what we
I,
used to handle our mental health is take it out on everybody else. That's how bullies are made, domestic violence, all of those things are attributed to people not knowing how to handle and
stress.
manage their stress and the things that are going on. So it's not that you know manlyhood is being lost because men are committing suicide because of stress. It's just they're not taking it out on everybody around them as much
Yeah,
as they used to.
and that it's like, first of all, men are being men. Most of the time, that's women saying that. Like, how are you going to define masculinity? I'm just saying. I'm seriously. So it's women defining masculinity, and then also I see this a lot. There's a lot of young women, who are like hammering this dude, telling them to do this and do that and how to be. So he's trying to be what she wants him to be as opposed to being himself. And a lot of us get caught up in that, trying to be what they want us to be. And that ain't gonna that's it's not gonna work. Those types of relationships are temporary because 1 year, 2 years down, you into that relationship, you're gonna find out that you don't even like each other.
Yeah, I have to correct myself. It lowered 63%, but guess what? It raised back up during COVID 19 and then it dropped back down after. So, what happened during COVID 19? People being
Being
stressed
forced in the house,
and
you were being forced to be in the house with your abuser.
yeah, and not having an outlet to handle that stress. And then the number went back up. And then as COVID 19 started to be less restrictive, the numbers went
But
back
we
down.
still, but the problem, even though the numbers went down, the problem still exists because
Yes.
if we put them back in that house again, we're gonna still have a lot more domestic violence because we still haven't dealt with the issue, and the issue really is the lack of emotional intelligence. Instead, when I get angry, I'm gonna punch a wall or I'm gonna punch somebody and I'm gonna feel better, and it's just not the truth. I mean, anger is one letter away from danger, and people ended up killing others, hurting others, getting locked up, going to drugs or whatever it may be, for coping skills. And we got to have better coping skills as opposed to like what you said, going to the bar and
Well,
drinking every time I get a problem.
because looking at these numbers, domestic violence from people under 35 is severely less than domestic violence for people over 45. And that tells you the trend about what we're unlearning at ages now.
That's good. You know what? This is really good. A question I've always wanted to ask is to a professional like you, how do you know you are depressed? And is it possible to be depressed and not know it?
Oh, it's definitely possible to be depressed and not know it. A lot of people who are dealing with uh, mental health problems and challenges are unaware. So let kind of give you the statistics. So it's like 1 in 5 adults and 1 in 5 in children that are actually. So you take 20 children or 20 people and put them in a room. You're talking about 4 or 5 people. On average, are going to have some mental health issues. So I teach a class. It's a nationally certified class in the state of Florida. Teachers actually have to have this class. They have to get certified in youth mental health first aid. We have youth mental health first aid, we have adult mental health first aid, and we have teen mental health first aid. And what that class does is it teaches you how to identify the signs and symptoms of someone going through a mental health challenge, how to have the conversations, how to de escalate, and how to connect them to professional help and also encourage self help. So, like in the class, I'll just kind of give you an example. Someone who sits in the room, for days at a time, the lights off, dark, very low conversations, very low energy. That's, a sign, those are signs of somebody who's probably dealing with depression.
Wow.
Someone who's typically all together and everything, and then you start noticing they're coming to work to shovel. They're not themselves. They're normally on the spot, shoes tight, everything is good, but then they're just not themselves. They're not dressed the way they're withdrawn. People who withdraw from certain activities, you can, and then also the conversations start talking like they have no hope. So, those are just some of the signs and symptoms that you would actually notice if somebody is actually going through depression. But there are classes like the mental health first aid that teach you. The one that I love is new. It's the teen mental health first aid because teens are more likely to go to their friends before they go to their parents. So we're
Mm-hmm.
actually teaching them from the ninth to 12th grade how to recognize when their friends may be going through a mental health challenge or crisis and how to be able to connect them to help. The thing that we know scientifically, the sooner the help comes, the less the chance that person has of dealing with a lifelong bout of depression and anxiety. Because, see, we're going to have challenges, we're going to have trauma, we're going to have things that happen. It could be a car accident, it could be a hurricane, it could be the death of a close family member. All of these different, it could be the loss of a job and loss of income. All of these different things can cause, different trauma and emotion. Some people can handle it, but it depends on how they grew up. Everybody is like, has a mental health bucket. Some people's bucket is filled all the way to the top. So if you drop a brick in it, it's going to overflow. Some people's bucket is not so full because they have not been through so much trauma, so they can handle that situation. So that's why we got to stop. Like, why are you so upset? With situations that that's easy for you. Well, you don't know. They might have been through 10 breakups, and they're starting to wonder, like, what's going on? like what's happening? And you're like, man, there's plenty of fish out in the sea. You got to stop saying things like that. And so, you know what? Instead of saying there's plenty of fish out in the sea, you can say, going through breakups is hard and it's tough. And if you want to talk to somebody, I'm here to, I'm available to talk to you.
This is powerful. I mean, this is so powerful because, that is so true. You can't say what someone else how they're feel. You don't know how they're feeling, and you got to try to find a way to get them back. Focused on what they need, even in their assignments or in their passion. Sometimes you say, "Well, why don't they do this anymore? Why aren't they doing this or that?" There's a reason. you know uh, they may play it off where you can't tell that there's a reason, but there's a reason they're not focusing what they need to be focused on. And sometimes you got to dig through all the stuff and get down to what's really going on. I really love this is awesome. Frazier, I really appreciate you,
Wait,
Christian.
hold on. You're not kicking him out yet, are you?
No, I don't want to kick him out yet.
I have something I want to show him, so just give me a second.
Thank you.
And the other thing about that, adding on to that, is a lot of times we don't have the language to express how we're feeling. So there are tests online like Mental Health America, MHAmerica.com. You can actually go online and take a test, and it kind of gives you an idea. But I just say, like, go to the therapist. Like, even if your life is happy, go to therapy. Like, just have a therapist available. Have a relationship with the therapist, counselor, because right now appointments are like 3 to 4 months out. So if you have a tragedy and you're like, I need to go to therapy and I want to get somebody, it's going to be so long. But when you already have a relationship and you have a trauma or tragedy, you can call up and say, I need to see you tomorrow, and, or talk to you tomorrow. And they can actually squeeze you in a lot faster. So, having a counselor is not just for bad times. And I also tell people it's funny because you go in there and validate your feelings. Like, my wife is doing this, that, and the other. And I was like, that actually is pretty bad. Uh, and
You
so
know
it
what?
gives and the same thing, my husband is doing this, that, and the other. You know what? You're right in feeling the way that you feel. So getting that validation actually helps us feel better just off the bat.
It's funny you say that because one of my problems dealing with all the things I had to deal with, PTSD, depression, insomnia, night terrors, all those things, is the VA. The appointments are like 6 months, 8 months. Sometimes your appointment's a year later. And I would go to group therapy and all those things, and none of those things worked. And I kept telling them those things works. I need something like a concierge because the people that I know that have concierge, they're expensive. Those psychiatrists or psychologists that you can call and say, I need to talk to you in 30 minutes. And they talk to you. I can't afford that. So they finally linked me up with community health. And when I explained that to the doctor there, she said, you know what I'm going to do? We don't do this, but when you need to talk to me, send me an iMessage and we'll pick a time. That helped me so much more because by the time I'd see the professional, the problem I was dealing with has already passed. So it's like, well, what do you want to talk?
Exactly.
Yeah, they're like, do you want to talk about it? I was like, no, I'm in a good mood. I don't want to talk about it right now.
It's over now.
Yeah.
It's like it's
But,
over now. It's like
but before we get
I
out
don't
of
want
here,
to relive that trauma because what that does is make you relive the trauma when you have to tell the story over again.
I want you to watch this clip. It's one of my favorite clips. It's an old clip. I don't know if you remember Bob Newhart. You should if you don't remember the Bionic Man. I want you to watch this clip and comment on this clip when it's over. We'll put it up right here.
Tell me about the problem that you wish to address.
Oh, okay. Well, I have this fear of being buried alive in a box. I start thinking about being buried alive and I begin to panic.
Has anyone ever tried to bury you alive in a box?
No, no, but truly thinking about it does make my life horrible. I mean, I can't go through tunnels or be in an elevator or in a house, anything boxy.
So what you're saying is you're claustrophobic.
Yes, that's it.
All right. Well, let's go, Catherine. I'm going to say two words to you right now. I want you to listen to them very, very carefully. Then I want you to take them out of the office with you and incorporate them into your life.
Shall I write them down?
Well, if it makes you comfortable, it's just two words. We find most people can remember them.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, here they are.
Stop it!
I'm sorry?
Stop it!
Stop it?
Yes, S-T-O-P, new word, I-T.
So, what are you saying?
It's funny. I say two simple words, and I cannot tell you the amount of people who say exactly the same thing you're saying. I mean, this is not Yiddish, Catherine. This is English. Stop it.
So, I should just stop it.
There you go. I mean, you don't want to go through life being scared of being buried alive in a box, do you? I mean, that sounds frightening.
It is.
Then stop it.
What's going to happen anyway?
I can't. I mean, it's been with me since childhood.
What's funny is I didn't want to show the 6 minute clip. What's funny is he says I charge $5, and my services usually last a couple minutes. And then she said, "Well, my child." He goes, "No, no, no, we don't talk about that." She goes, "Well, my mother." "No, no, no, we don't talk about that." And it's silly, but I was talking to a friend when I saw this skit. I was talking to a friend a little bit after that, and the problem they were telling me was such an insignificant problem. And I know it might seem, but literally, if I had the time to tell you, you'd roll your eyes. And I just looked at them. I said, "Stop it." And they're like, "What?" I said, "Just stop it." And then I showed them that skit, and they're like, "Oh, okay, I get it. I'm being silly." I said, "Yes, you're being silly. Stop it."
Yeah, but you
You
know
just-
what though? It's not even the person being silly. Like this situation is just big. It's their whole world at the time, and so like and stop it is actually so powerful because I talk about thoughts being like you're in a train and you're in a train station, and sometimes that thought comes on. You're still arguing with the person that you was arguing with last week. You're telling them, you're cussing them out, saying all the things you should have said. I should have said this. I should have said that. And you're still arguing with them. You're wasting your mental energy on that. Stop it. So what you do is you realize that you're on this thought train. You say, stop it, get off that train, and get on a happier thought train.
So that's not a bad skit.
It's not a bad skit. It's
That
just that you
reminds
got
me
you.
of me. I was doing that all weekend, fussing, fussing, fussing. Nobody's here. Fussing. My husband be walking by. "What's wrong with you?" Ah, da, da, da. I was fussing, fussing, fussing. I said, what am I doing? Answering myself and everything. But
So I couldn't show the whole
So
clip
you got to tell yourself to stop it. So like,
stop
well,
it,
it says stop it.
stop it,
I
Seth, stop
I
it, I
couldn't
say.
I couldn't show the whole clip because of YouTube, but the second thing she brought up a second problem that was even more ridiculous. And he said, "Okay, I'm going to tell you 9 words that's going to help you solve this problem, and you can write them down if you want to." So she got out her pad and pencil. He goes, "Stop it, or I'll bury you in a box."
Wow.
It's
So,
almost like that's what they call exposure therapy. Like when people are like afraid of certain things, like you have those who are afraid to go outside. So
mhm,
like what they do is they'll have them just stand at the door and and then the next day they'll have them stand outside the door. Then the next day they'll have them go to the curb and like
yeah,
slow exposure to that.
yeah,
And then you start realizing like I actually went outside and I didn't die.
Ain't
yeah,
that something?
yeah.
Everything that I thought was going to happen when I went there didn't.
I said, "Well,
And
you're
so like there's some types of exposure therapy, within the book, because we're dealing with so many different levels of things from depression, anxiety, personality disorders, ruminating thoughts, that inner self critic that's just nagging us all the time. And and like I said, what you said, you were arguing all weekend. You got a spouse in the house. They're trying to be happy. and you walking around your face, and, and people talk about, excuse my French, so I'm gonna do, but people talk about resting bitch face. There's no such thing. It comes from resting bitch thoughts. You have some negative thoughts going on in your head that's
Yes,
actually making your face ball up like that. It just ain't no default or anything like that. You're thinking something negative.
that's right. Absolutely, absolutely. And it was I had to get myself together. I said, now wait a minute. I said, go to your happy place. Be quiet. I had to go to my happy place and get quiet and get calm and I had to talk with God, I had to talk with him. And when I calmed down and went to my silent place, my happy place, like in your book, we talk about happiness triggers. I had to go there, wherever it made me happy. That's where I had to go, and I got calm. I was relaxed. You know what? It's going to be all right. And
No,
I
it
was
took
fine. I
took me
was
a lot to learn it. When I was little, I got more help as an adult than a kid. But when I was younger, I went to church all the time, of course, with my grandmother. And from the time I can remember to the time I stopped going in my teens, every time I would tell an adult in church that I had an issue, and now knowing the issues that I was saying were psychological, for 15 years, every single adult gave me the same exact answer. I'll just pray on it.
Yeah, that's one of those conversations that I love to have because you can have Jesus and a therapist, you can have Jesus and a doctor, you can have because mental health is extremely prevalent in the church, and it starts with the leadership. Leaders in the church are faced with hearing a lot more trauma than the average person. So they're exposed to secondary trauma, and that's why we have a lot of over the past, I'm gonna say 3 years, we've had a lot of suicides with pastors. One pastor took himself out and his entire family, but we don't want to talk about the mental health of the church. But every book in the Bible talks about mental health, and this is
Yes,
one of the things that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King suffered with anxiety and depression. A lot of people don't know this. He attempted suicide twice as a child. You don't hear them talking about that in the news. You don't hear them talking about that in the church. But one of the researchers that wrote a book about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said it was his anxiety and it was a depression. It was a depression that actually gave him what he needed, the compassion that he needed for the civil rights movement. It is not something that can hinder us. You can actually take it and use it, like I said, that trauma as a superpower if you like. Because I know, like for me, my trauma has given me. I could read people. I could tell that person is good or bad instantly, right on the spot. And you develop these gifts and all of these things from going through this stuff. So reframe it. T- Look at what you learn from it or what you're learning from it right
that's good.
Awesome.
This is good because I know the other day my husband and I watched this new movie by Tyler Perry, Straw.
Uh,
And I'm telling you, that's a powerful movie because it's powerful because
uh,
that it just took that was the last straw for her. And I'm just saying, some people are going through so much in their life. We don't know when that's the last straw.
I
It was
see that
touching.
being so
now.
dead.
But if somebody would have stepped to her and tried to help her and show some compassion earlier, the movie would have been over in 10 minutes.
There we go.
But that's the thing. We don't really have a lot of compassion and empathy for people today because everybody is so angry, upset. You see it, people arguing in the stores, people arguing in retail establishments, restaurants, everywhere. It's just out of control,
It's
because we're
really
we're 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 really angry. But it's actually been on a rise, and now like fear is the leading emotion in the world today. It wasn't always like that. And fear and anger really are the same emotion. It puts us in fight or flight mode. And one of the last things that I want to say, because I know that the time is spent, is that when you get into this angry mode, when you get to this upset mode, it's like what happens in your brain. The thinking shifts from here to back here, the amygdala, and that's the fight or fight. That's what you want to do. You want to flee or you want to fight. And we don't do logical thinking when we're in the fight or fight mode. So if you could just take 90 seconds to do deep breathing, and that's just taking your breath in and holding it for a few seconds, 3 seconds, and letting it out. And if you can just do that for 90 seconds, it will shift your thinking from your amygdala back to your prefrontal cortex, where you can actually make more logical decisions and get yourself out of that mode.
This is good.
Doctor, thank you for coming on today. It's amazing.
You know
Thank
what?
you for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Frazier. Please go out and purchase his book on Amazon, Happiness Triggers by Christian Frazier. I'm telling you, I'm ordered my book already, my copy, and I'm excited about getting it because I know it's going to be a blessing to me and it'll be a blessing to you. I
You
thank
bet.
you, God, for all your comments out there. You know, I don't want to forget you guys either. There was a few comments, and I want to thank you for making your comments. Let's see. Some said that this show is going to help a lot of people. That was from Clarence. Laughter is good for the
Blessings.
soul. And yes, there have been some comments. So thank you so very, very much. And just remember, if you're going through something, hey, we all go through something, but just don't, you might be going through something, but the key word in there is through. The key word is through. Go through it. Don't stop there. Don't stop, but keep going. Pick up Frazier's book, and thank you again, and welcome. And don't forget to come back again on the Rise with Lisette. All right. Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.